At exactly noon, a cannon roared. In that instant, the American frontier didn't just move, it detonated. More than 50,000 people surged forward at once, on horseback, in wagons, and on foot, racing across open land in a frantic, dust-choked stampede. No fences, no roads, no second chances. This was not just a race. It was the rewriting of a map. For decades, this land had been known as Indian Territory. It was the forced home of the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Comanche, and Apache. Nations that had already been driven from their original homelands and relocated here under government orders. Here, they rebuilt, they governed, they survived. And for a time, this land was meant to remain theirs. But by the late 1800s, that promise began to collapse. Railroads stretched westward, farming technology improved. And suddenly, 2 million acres of land began to look less like a homeland and more like an opportunity. In 1889, the decision was made. Nearly 1.9 million acres of unassigned lands would be opened for settlement. President Benjamin Harrison set the moment with precision, noon, April 22nd. From that moment on, anyone could race for land, but no one was allowed to start early. Across the borders of the territory, entire tent cities formed almost overnight. These settlers were known as the boomers. They studied every map they could find. They trained horses for speed instead of strength. They reinforced wagons like they were preparing for war, because once the signal came, hesitation meant loss. By the morning of April 22nd, the pressure was unbearable. At Fort Reno, soldiers formed a line to hold back the crowd. Thousands stood in silence, just meters from opportunity. The air was still. Then the final seconds slipped away. At exactly 12 o'clock, the cannon fired, and everything broke. Whips cracked through the air. Horses exploded forward. Wagons lurched into motion, some collapsing before they even cleared the starting line. People ran into the land in every direction at once, swallowed immediately by rising dust. For hours, the chaos stretched across the horizon. Flags were driven into soil, stakes were hammered into earth. Boundaries were drawn as fast as human hands could move. Land was no longer something inherited. It was something taken. By nightfall, the impossible had already happened. Entire cities had appeared. Guthrie, Oklahoma City, Norman, Kingfisher. They did not grow slowly. They formed instantly, like the land itself had been rewritten in a single day. Guthrie alone swelled to thousands of people before sunset. But beneath the speed of expansion, something else was unfolding. Some settlers had crossed the border before noon. They hid in the land, waiting for the signal. They were called the Sooners. Their early arrival triggered years of legal battles, accusations, and fraud cases that overwhelmed the courts. To prevent future chaos, the government eventually replaced land runs with controlled lotteries. But by then, the damage and the transformation was already complete. By the early 1900s, most of the land had passed into white ownership. And in 1907, Oklahoma became a state. What began as a single moment of movement had reshaped an entire region. A cannon fired at noon did not just start a race, it ended a frontier and built a new world in its place.